The Software Leaders Uncensored podcast, where tech leaders grow beyond the code.
You're listening to Software Leaders Uncensored, the no-fluff podcast for tech execs who are done with buzzwords and BS. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, serial entrepreneur, and currently writing my second book about what I've learned building 30 ventures, having 20 failures and 10 wins, taking companies all the way through going public, franchise companies nationwide, and raised tens of millions of dollars. The common theme of all of my companies is building them around custom software. Now, through my company, Sononify, I help scale engineering teams with elite nearshore engineers who move fast and deliver. Each episode, I sit down with real software leaders to unpack what's working, what's broken, and what actually matters. So let's dive in. Today, we are very lucky to have Doug Schaefer out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Doug is the CTO of American Sound. He is an AI engineer, solution architect, CTO. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to having a conversation.
Awesome. Doug, tell everybody, give a minute or two on your background that led up to you being CTO of American Sound.
Yeah, so I have a pretty varied background in different types of audiovisual and IT infrastructure solutions. I actually came up through the ranks as an engineer a couple of companies ago. Field engineering and implementation engineering. I've done a lot of work in the data center and as a software developer myself. Kind of entered into the C-suite at a younger age. I'm only 32, but previous company that I worked for, they were really interested in the varied experiences that I did have, despite only being in the industry for about 6 or 7 years. And I really kind of thrive in unfamiliar situations. So I think being able to a little bit of a different viewpoint, more on the engineering side to solving overall business decisions is something that I've been especially good at. And that is how I got to be where I am today.
Fantastic. So you've been hands-on from the sound and visual engineering to software engineering through becoming a CTO at 32. That's phenomenal. And I will say, I do think CTO is one of the toughest jobs out there right now. Trying to appease non-technical executives, investors, board members, getting your team in line. It's a tough job. So glad to have you. Tell everybody, American Sound is, I know the company dates back to the 90s. Tell us a little bit about the company and then a little more of how you got the gig as CTO there.
Yeah, so company's been around for a long time. Like you said, the 90s actually got started around World War II time. The father of the previous owner of the company actually started it, and they were basically making a living selling communications technology to the military, specifically radio and other stuff that powered critical communications at the time. Kind of evolved and blossomed into a full-time audio and visual integration, so providing communication systems, but more for enterprises, healthcare systems, the federal government, and both on the video and then also on the audio conferencing side. So long and colorful history and providing advanced technology solutions to a bunch of different types of companies and different vertical markets. I personally got this particular gig. The current owner and CEO is named Patrick Friend, and our headquarters is in Cincinnati, Ohio. He called me personally and said, "Hey, I've kind of been watching your work from afar. I have some friends and coworkers that really respect you and the stuff that you've been doing previously at other organizations, kind of helping them level up their technology strategy. Would you consider kind of coming over and being our CTO?" And I said, I'd been at my previous role for 3 or 4 years, doing a lot of global integration and support service development. This is a smaller organization. We have about 275 employees. So a little bit of a step down from the global gig, but I really kind of liked the idea of building something smaller up from the ground and kind of having a little bit more agency in what we do for a living and how that gets done on the operations side. So I said, sure. And it's been a great experience. I've been here about 3 years now, actually 2 years plus some change. And I just have to say it's a really fast-paced environment working for, a mid-sized company. I wouldn't call us a startup, but definitely not a full-blown enterprise solutions provider either. And I think that provides some unique challenges, but also some really exciting opportunities to, move quickly, develop your own solutions, kind of build stuff from scratch. And I've really enjoyed it.
Excellent. So you utilize your network to get you and your reputation to get you where you are. That's fantastic. Let's talk about some of the projects you're working on. I know you're launching a new cloud-based video conferencing offering. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we work with a bunch of different partners to kind of help co-develop some solutions for them and bring them to market. One of our favorite partners that we work with is a company called Pexip, who specializes in providing the backbone infrastructure backbone for cloud video interop solutions. So bridging video calling between Microsoft Teams and Zoom and Cisco WebEx and other enterprise collaboration platforms like that. And what we do is we help companies integrate those kind of out of the box software as a solution platforms with Pexip so that they can bridge their calls to recording solutions, custom developed video communications offerings, sometimes between platforms. So we have companies trying to call from Microsoft Teams to Zoom or vice versa. And we kind of help bridge that gap for them and make sure that, whatever you're kind of buying actually fits your business case and kind of helping provide custom integration for that stuff.
So the product will literally, I could initiate a Zoom call and you can do it from Microsoft Teams as an example.
Yeah, using standard-based video conferencing protocols, we kind of bridge the calls together and make it so it feels to the end user like you're joining a meeting if you're joining from a conference room or from a desktop, it feels like you're joining it from natively from inside the application, but it's actually bridging the call between the platforms. So it's really cool.
Right. So I don't know, I'm typically on 8-10 hours of Zoom calls a day. I know my company, our standard is Zoom. Whenever somebody's from Teams or Cisco WebEx or Google Meet, I know they always have to shuffle the settings. How does this product get around those things?
So what it does is inside of the meeting invitation that gets sent out for Zoom or WebEx or whatever, it'll actually embed a special join URL for the Pexip service or however we decide to brand it for that customer.
Okay.
And it allows people to then join that meeting from a different platform using a standard-based video conferencing protocol called SIP or H323, depending on what is a priority on the network. And it lets you join it from a different application. And it works for conference rooms. It works for different types of telephony systems. It's really versatile. And we've seen people get some really good use out of it.
So educate me. I do not know this space. Why is this taking so long to be a solution? What's going on here?
That's a great question. I will say, I think part of it is the market for it prior to COVID and general pandemic stuff was not quite so strong because video conferencing kind of took a backseat in the past. Pandemic really brought out or exposed a really big need for, I guess, more versatile video collaboration between different departments, different business units in the enterprise, different stuff in the government. Video really stepped up in the market around pandemic time. You've seen that with the rise of remote work and even hybrid working scenarios. So that demand existed right during pandemic time, but it takes a little bit after that for the development to kind of really happen and to be integrated in such a way where it feels very clean and native. After
that explanation makes sense.
Yeah,
that definitely makes sense. And man, as a guy who once again spends most of his life in front of the screen on calls on video, I'm excited for this.
Yeah. No, it's going to change a lot, I think, about how businesses communicate.
So your company has been around since the 50s. You're building new tech. How are you balancing legacy system integration, cloud native solutions? That's got to be certainly keep you on your toes.
It really does, especially audiovisual and a lot of the stuff that we provide. We find ourselves kind of having to account for or ensure backwards compatibility in the stuff that we provide because sometimes a company doesn't have the ability to throw out their entire VoIP system or other things that they're using to communicate, but they want to have as much interop as possible. It is a challenge. I will say one of the things we really struggle with prioritizing, but always has to be kind of forefront of mind is security, right? So making sure that we're allowing for backwards compatibility and solving the business challenges that are required without sacrificing security requirements. So that will dictate, a wider scale platform upgrade sometimes because I don't want to have to account for an old version of TLS or networking protocol that shouldn't be in production anymore. But at the same time, businesses only have so much money. So we work with a lot of people to kind of more or less enhance their security posture and what they're doing on the integration side as best as we can. And that's a challenge on the backwards compatibility side, but also an opportunity sometimes for businesses to make sure that they're continuously auditing and making sure that their infrastructure supports the stuff that they're trying to do on a day-to-day basis, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Well, that's got to keep you on your toes. Let's talk about your engineering team. Tell me about your team and Are they in person, hybrid, remote? Are they US based? Are they all over the world?
So we are all US based currently because we do some work with government entities that require us to be onshore. Our engineering team and our developers are incredible. We are a pretty good mix of in-person, hybrid, or remote. I mostly leave that up to them to decide, what the best way is for them to work. I'm very intentional and about accommodating different types of working styles because I know some people really struggle with the full remote work schedule and kind of being isolated, and some people actually thrive that way. And
Yep.
I personally feel like as a technology leader, the best way I can help my team to succeed and produce is by enabling them to be in the environment where they are the most comfortable and most creative. Right. So I have a good amount of people that choose to come into the office every day. They're local to an American Sound location and they say, hey, my at-home working environment is fine, but I collaborate better in person. And some people say, hey, I'm fine with coming in once a week, once every couple of weeks, but most of my just grind work, I do better on my own at home. And both scenarios are fine. I trust my team. I really prefer them to mostly just enjoy working here, and whatever helps them produce best, I want them to do with their time.
That's a lot of flexibility, and that's fantastic. I agree with your logic. Tell us about your tech stack and why you chose that route.
Sure. Yeah. So we are kind of about to go through a miniature migration, actually, which I'm really excited about. We are moving.
Only your CTO would say that.
I know.
I'm excited about a complex technology migration, but please continue.
I'm excited about what it'll look like when we're done. How about that?
Yeah, there you go.
We are about to move all of our code repositories into Azure DevOps. This is a really big change for us, but one I'm pretty excited about because it'll allow us to actually provide some open sourcing opportunities for some of our custom modules that we built. I am a very active and passionate member of the open source community. I feel like there's some stuff that should be open source, and I think that encourages collaboration and creativity. We've seen that across a variety of different products and verticals. And so Azure DevOps is going to kind of power our CI/CD change management pipeline and allow us to integrate with a bunch of the Microsoft developer tools that we use now, as well as our Azure infrastructure, which is what we're using on the back end for a lot of our blob storage and what we're doing on the networking side. So in addition to allowing us to then host a lot of our custom modules that we make on GitHub and allow for other audiovisual developers in the community to kind of contribute their own custom stuff that they make. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to help bring the audiovisual industry closer together on the development side. And it's not something that a lot of other service providers have done before. It's been pretty closed in the past, and people do tend to hoard custom anything as kind of a money-making opportunity. And I think this will help my customers out as well and give them more opportunities to kind of see what's available, right? And then also contribute to stuff as they improve in their own environments.
So in your environment, what's more important, a .NET, Azure rockstar, or somebody with the audio-visual networking and programming expertise?
You know what? That's a super hard question to answer because they're both pretty important. I will say I think AV has enough unique nuances to it that I really do value somebody with that background because there's a lot specific to our industry that's important. But I will say at the same time, there's a lot that's changing to be more kind of standard language based in our space, where I am really starting to see our people that have more flexibility and experience with C# and .NET and some more kind of open frameworks. They're starting to shine more and more every day because their experience in that space specifically gets to shine through in their work. It'll be really interesting to see what that looks like in about a year, I think. But currently, both sets of expertise is very important for us, and we have people on our team that are very good at both, some with more with one than the other, but watching everybody kind of learn and get better as they go is also really rewarding. So
so as a CTO in 2025, what are the biggest challenges you're facing now?
So they are varied and also important. I will say security, especially in a ever developing era of AI, is very important. I am always very concerned when people come to me with the very first request that they have for anything that we integrate to be, can it be AI first? Can it be anything else, without seeing an equivalent emphasis on security and data management inside of their organization, right? I feel like AI is a really nuanced conversation, and I really want to make sure when we talk to people like, hey, are you considering everything that goes into this? Because I don't want to integrate a solution for you that's going to end up endangering you in a different way, right? So helping people kind of balance their priorities a little bit has been a little challenging because, there's technology leaders or engineers all over the place that kind of have a more narrow view of the enterprise or of the technology stack, where I have more of a macro look at everything as a CTO, right? So I guess that would be a big one. I will say another one is the actual infrastructure is changing very rapidly. How we do networking and storage is very different now than it used to be in regards to just the capability of networks and software defined network access and infrastructure, and how we do cloud and versus on-premise, or what hybrid environments look like. And I think there's a lot of complexity to that a lot of engineers kind of weren't really equipped to keep up with. So us as a service provider, kind of helping our customers work through that, that's been a challenge. And honestly, the general kind of economic tariff situation kind of helps hardware purchasing, or kind of complicates hardware purchasing.
It helps.
Yeah.
I was gonna make you explain that.
Yeah, no, it complicates it. It definitely makes it, and really what that means more on our side of things is I'm working really closely with a lot of people to kind of make sure that, we're reprioritizing initiatives as needed to make sure that stuff is really, we're not upgrading or replacing hardware unless it's very much needed. And sometimes we're doing more development to kind of compensate for that. So it's not really a blocker so much as it is just something that requires some more creativity to work around. And it just is the way that it is. So I would say those would be
That's the right attitude. There's factors we can't change, so it's our job to find solutions. So you mentioned AI with your clients, and how are you guys using AI today, whether it's within your products, whether it's within your development and engineering practices?
Yeah. So we have a couple of really cool applications that I'm proud of. I would say probably our most common use of AI currently for internal business purposes is generative AI. We do use Copilot primarily as our interface at our company for AI usage. We've done a pretty good job kind of working with Copilot Studio and kind of developing with Microsoft a little bit of like, what does our custom language model, look like, and how are we training it, and what are we feeding it document library wise, and kind of using it as a pseudo knowledge base for that. That product has gotten much better since its kind of general availability status last year, which has been really cool to watch. We've made some good use of other chat-based AI models as well. We have a couple of users that are doing really well using Claude and the Anthropic product, and a couple of other stuff out there, mostly just for helping write scopes of work, create standard operating procedures, documentation for internal business practices, stuff like that. Very handy. We've not gotten to make as heavy use of agents as I would like. I think that's probably going to be like our next push, because we're still kind of helping people figure out like, what does a acceptable use of AI look like. I'm excited to start incorporating agents. I think that also kind of is it's going to be a little bit of a project to get that fully incorporated with the other stuff that we're doing. But definitely heavy usage of generative AI internally for us for documentation purposes. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that.
From an engineering perspective, have you been able to have efficiencies with unit tests, with coding documentation? What efficiencies have you been able to utilize thus far?
Yeah, coding documentation for sure. We have a couple of developers that are using Cursor very heavily to kind of help create that and do auditing that way. We are very intentional about QA being done by a senior developer, somebody that really kind of knows the code very well. But we are finding a lot of the stuff that we write and the stuff that both on the code side and the documentation side is being done with AI and then kind of audited by somebody with, actual experience in real time to make sure that we're not having any problems there. The quality and output of those has been getting slowly better over time as the models kind of get better over time, which is great. That's the whole point.
It's amazing how different a next version of something can be, as it's just moving so rapidly right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been really fun kind of seeing that evolve in real time too.
What is the latest and greatest emerging tech in the audiovisual space? What's kind of the exciting things out there?
Yeah, so I think a fun one is, in a good application of AI and AV, is the evolution of camera tracking and audio tracking algorithms inside of video conferencing. And there's a bunch of vendors that have done a really good job kind of incorporating algorithmic AI into their products as far as just recognizing people's faces and gestures and kind of working to identify what different correlations of data points for like just the human body look like inside of a video image. Something that we've been able to start doing is gesture-based control automation for video conferencing. So if I hold my hand up and make a certain, wave at the camera or whatever, I can make it do a different action if I'm waving than if I was standing in a different part of the room, like making a different gesture, like a fist bump or a thumbs up or something like that. And that's of AI processing on the back end. And it's also one of those things that's been improving over time and being more reliable. But it's a very exciting technology because I think it improves accessibility to AV systems that can otherwise be very complicated. And I'm really kind of looking forward to see what the future releases for that look like this year.
Interesting. Doug, you rose up the ranks very quickly, achieved CTO status at a young age. What advice would you give to aspiring engineering leaders that want to evolve into the CTO role?
I would say the one thing that really served me well in my journey so far is I always have a really clear focus on what the outcome is desired for any specific business project, anything like that. I listen some to what people ask me, but I try and read really carefully into what are they actually trying to accomplish? Like, what is the end goal of anything that we're working towards? Because sometimes a pivot or creative problem solving is necessary, and being able to kind of problem solve inside of the context of a greater initiative is very important. And I've done really well sometimes finding a slightly unorthodox solution to a problem that nobody had really thought to try to solve before in order to get where they were trying to go. I would say that, and also just being a very proactive communicator has served me very well. Reaching out to different teams and trying to be as cross-functional as possible in my jobs has always benefited either myself or somebody else. And when people say that they want you to be a team player, sometimes it really means being able to bridge the gaps between different business units and different specialties and kind of try to speak their language a little bit when you're collaborating with people. Because as a technologically, advanced leader, it doesn't do me any good to not be able to communicate a problem or a concept to somebody that's not as technical. Because ultimately a business is made up of a bunch of different people, and I need to be able to communicate the way that they can understand it, right? So I would say creative problem solving inside of a greater context, and then just being a great communicator. Those are the things that are the most important to me on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. So if your CEO was to come to you tomorrow and said, Doug, we need to be an AI leader in our space by next month, what would be your response?
That would be a lot of work. I would say we technically by some definitions already be that, but I would say that's doable. Our data is there. We've done a very good job with data classification and a lot of the internal stuff that we're doing. I would say we would need to accelerate our testing of agents and some of the way that we do generative AI. That would be on the internal side. I think as far as the solutions that we actually deploy for clients, we'd have to work with our vendors and some people that create the hardware products very closely. We do have some really exciting things in the pipeline with Intel and NVIDIA and Cisco that I'm really proud of. That'll be later this year. I think there'll be some cool partnerships that we can announce. But we'll be there. I fully believe that that'll be something that...
Well, and it's key. You said your internal data is structured and classified and sounds like governed the right way to be able to make use of it, which a lot of clients, all right, we need AI. All right, let's make sure your data sources, your data platform is good. And it's like, well, it's from there. They're all classified different. Like, all right, well, we'll get to AI someday, but first we got to tackle this problem. So it sounds like you have your organization ready to rock there.
A model is only as good as the data that you have to train it on, right? So in AV, we have a saying, it's called garbage in and garbage out. It usually refers to audio, but it's true for this as well. Our outputs, we want them to be predictable and trustworthy. In order to do that, we have to believe and have good data hygiene and control what's going into the model to begin with, right? Train it on the right stuff. So
excellent. Doug, thanks for getting uncensored with us today. Excited to see how you continue to shape the next chapter of American Sound and the industry at large. Any final shout outs or advice for tech leaders you want to give?
No, I would say, thanks for having me on here. I'm really happy to be able to, kind of talk about what we're doing. I would say just generally speaking, AI is a hot topic and there's a lot of stuff going on in the networking and security space, and it's affecting every technology and every vertical. I would say just be very intentional and purposeful in your adoption of AI or anything that you're classifying as an emerging technology. Don't jump on it because it's a hype or a buzzword or just for the sake of doing it. Do it on purpose. Like, solve an actual problem with that. AI is a means to an end, not the end by itself, right? So my advice for everyone is just, if you're going to do it, have a goal, and the goal needs to be to actually solve a problem and accomplish something and get better at something with the tool that you're implementing, right? So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Doug. Really appreciate it. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin, CEO, podcast host, author. If this conversation sparked something with you, share it, subscribe, send it to somebody in the trenches with you, and stay bold and keep building out there. Thanks, everyone.